kids, okay, and welcome back to the Andy Bear Show. Yes, and welcome to my den. I'm going to do another story time today. So one of my favourite books that I read is Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Yes, it is, and you know that I'm a bear, so you could use your imagination and just imagine that Goldilocks went to my house and ate my porridge and broke my chair and slept in my bed and all of those things that she did that day when she found the cottage in the woods. And this is how the story goes, and as normal, Andy Bear is going to tell it his way and how he sees it and how he enjoys to explain it to you. Okay, here we go then. Once upon a time, there was a little girl called Goldilocks, and she lived with her mummy and daddy in a lovely house in the middle of a forest. And one morning Goldilocks woke up and she decided that while mummy was cooking her breakfast, that she would go out in the garden and play. But she wasn't allowed to leave the garden, because her mummy and daddy at all times wanted to know that she was safe and she can be seen from out of the window playing in her garden. But she was very naughty one day. She decided to go for a little wander. Yes, she did. She decided to leave the garden and walk deeper into the woods. And in the woods lived a family of bears in a cottage. And in that cottage lived 3 bears, a family of 3 bears. There was a mummy bear, a daddy bear, and a baby bear. And they woke up on the same morning, and they were cooking like they do every morning, beautiful bowls of hot porridge, so they could sit down and have their breakfast. And there was a big bowl for daddy, a medium-sized bowl for mummy, and a small bowl for baby bear. But when they all sat down to have their porridge, the porridge was real hot, and it needed to be cooled down so they didn't burn their lips. Far too hot to eat. So the bears decided to go out for a little walk into the woods while their breakfast cooled down. And that's exactly what they did. They had a little explore in the woods. But by this time, Goldilocks was already deep into those woods, and she'd left her garden. What a naughty girl she was! As she came across the bear's house, and she was so interested, she walked closer and closer to the bear's house and looked into the windows. And she said, "Hello, hello, is there anybody in?" But there wasn't, because the bears had already left and they were out having a look around the woods. So Goldilocks walked into the cottage. Yes, she did. And when she walked in, she saw the 3 bowls of porridge on the table. And by this time Goldilocks was very hungry after all that walking. So she sat down, and she sat down in Daddy Bear's chair on the table where Daddy Bear's bowl of porridge was. And she went to try it, and it was still too hot, and she said to herself, "This is far too hot for me. I'm going to try the other bowl." So she moved on to the middle chair where Mummy's porridge was, and again it was too hot for Goldilocks. So she moved on to Baby Chair, where Baby Bear sat, and the porridge for Baby Bear was there. And it was just right when she tasted it. It was beautiful. Just the right temperature on how she liked to eat her porridge as well. And she was starving by this time. And she ate the whole bowl of porridge. She didn't leave anything in that bowl for Baby Bear. No, she enjoyed it so much. She must have been so hungry. So once the bowl of porridge had gone, she decided to have a little walk around the cottage. I don't think she thought for 1 second that she was in someone else's house. She didn't know who they were and what they looked like and what they would do. You know, she was being very brave but also very silly at the same time. Anyway, she walked into another room and there was 3 chairs. 3 wooden chairs. And there was a big chair, a medium chair, and a small chair. So the big chair was Daddy Bear's chair. And she couldn't even get on that chair. It was so tall. She couldn't get on there. So she left it and went to the middle chair. And that was Mummy Bear's chair. She was able to get on that chair, but she found it too hard. So she didn't like it. This chair is too hard for me. So she moved on to the Baby Bear's chair. And that was just right. It had a lovely cushion on it. It was so soft and just the right height for Goldilocks. But all of a sudden, the chair broke and Goldilocks fell to the floor and the chair fell into lots of different pieces. Well, she didn't bat an eyelid at that and she moved on into the bedroom. Yes, she did. She moved on into the bear's bedroom. And when she got in there was 3 beds. Yes, there was. And again, there was a big bed, a medium-sized bed, and a baby bed. And she jumped onto the big bed to start off with. It's far too hard. So she moved on to the middle bed. And when she got onto the middle bed, which was Mummy's bed, Mummy Bear's bed, she said, "This bed is far too soft." So, as always, like the chair and like the porridge, she went to the smaller bed. And this was just right for Goldilocks. She liked this bed. It was just right for Goldilocks to have a good rest after that walking in the woods. But she was so comfortable in this little bed that she fell into a deep, deep sleep. And she was out like a light. And she continued to sleep. And all of a sudden, the 3 bears were walking back to the cottage. Yes, they were. And they walked into their cottage. And the minute they walked into their cottage, Daddy Bear looked at his bowl and said, "Who's been eating my porridge?" Still moved the spoon and made it look like it had been played with. He wasn't very happy. And Mummy Bear said the same thing. The same thing had happened to Mummy Bear. The spoon was left in the porridge. "Who's been eating my porridge?" Mummy Bear said. Well, they wasn't very happy. Oh no, they wasn't. But Baby Bear, when he looked at his bowl, he said, "And who not only has been eating my porridge, but eaten all of the porridge? The whole bowl of porridge was empty." And Baby Bear cried. He was so upset. He really was. So the 3 bears went into the other room where there was those 3 chairs that Goldilocks sat on. And Daddy Bear said, "Who's been sitting in my chair?" Well, Goldilocks didn't sit in that chair, did she? Because it was too tall, but she had moved it. It was out of place. And Daddy Bear noticed. And Mummy Bear said, "Who's been sitting in my chair?" And obviously Goldilocks had sat on that chair, but found it not very comfortable. But she had still moved it out of position, so Mummy Bear was able to see that someone had been sitting in her chair. And yet again Baby Bear said, "And who has been sitting in my chair? And what makes it worse is who's broken my chair." He was so upset and he cried. Yes, he did. He cried. He loved that chair so much. Oh, and by this time, kids, the bears were really angry. Really angry that someone had been into their cottage and eaten their porridge and broken the chair. So they moved into the bedroom. And obviously Goldilocks had tried all 3 beds that were all made nice and neatly before they left the cottage. And Daddy Bear said, "Who has been on my bed?" All the covers were creased and that where Goldilocks had rolled around on that bed. He wasn't very happy at all. And then they moved on to Mummy's bed. And Mummy Bear said exactly the same thing. "Who has been on my bed?" It was far too soft for Goldilocks Bear's bed, if you remember. And yet again Baby Bear walked over to his bed and said, "Who is still sleeping in my bed?" Oh, Goldilocks was still in there, and she had no clue by this time that there was 3 bears standing around the bed that she was sleeping in. She was going to get such a shock when she woke up. Anyway, with all this commotion, Goldilocks did awake and see. The first thing she said, and she opened her eyes, she got the shock of 3 bears standing over her. And she was so scared of these 3 bears, even though they were very harmless. And she ran. She got up out of the bed and she ran so fast out of that cottage, as fast as her little legs could take her, running, running, running to get home. But out of the blue, her mummy and daddy were so worried about her because they couldn't see her out the window playing in that lovely garden at home, that they had already set out to look for her because they were worried. And she saw her mummy and daddy in the woods, and she ran straight over to them and gave them both a really big cuddle. And they said, "Where have you been, Goldilocks?" And Goldilocks said, "Well, if you come back to our house, I'll tell you all about it." And there was a golden rule here, a golden rule, that Mummy and Daddy said to Goldilocks there and then. "Goldilocks, you must never leave the garden. We were so worried and we had to find you." And Goldilocks said to her Mummy and Daddy there and then, "Mummy, Daddy, I am so sorry. I will never go wandering off again when I'm asked to stay somewhere that I should be." And Goldilocks never did leave the garden again when she went out to play, and she learned a very valuable lesson that day. So I hope you enjoyed my story, and thank you for joining my den today, and I'm going to see you all on the next show. And thank you so much for joining Andy Bear in the Den. I've had a great time. I hope you have too. And as always, I'm going to give you a great big Andy Bear wave. And I'm going to say to you, be safe, take care, and I'll see you on the next show. Bye bye.